During my wedding my husband whispered, "You have to pay me your $7,800 monthly salary or I will marry your pregnant rich sister." I refused, so he pushed me away and invited my sister to take my place. I was shocked when my sister and family accepted his proposal. I immediately left the wedding and a few hours later he called me in a panic. It was one of those days where everything felt normal until it didn't. "My name's Rachel, and managing a hotel pretty much sums up my life. The check-ins and check-outs never stop, and you've got to be ready for anything, especially complaints." I was at the front desk when a guy came storming over. He looked expensive, fancy suit, slicked back hair, the whole deal. He slammed his phone on the counter and glared at me like it was my fault his room wasn't right. "The state of my room is unacceptable. Who's responsible for this?" He snapped, his voice sharp. I put on my best customer service smile, trying to smooth things over. "I'm really sorry about that. I'm Rachel, the manager. Let me fix this for you right away." He huffed, still eyeing me suspiciously. "I hope so." I was about to call the owner. "What's your name again?" "Rachel," I repeated, keeping calm. "Let's sort this out. How about I upgrade you to one of our best rooms for free to make up for the inconvenience?" As we walked to the new room, I noticed him start to relax. "Sorry for blowing up like that," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "Name's Sean. I've been on the road for weeks, and it's wearing me down." "No worries, Sean. We all have days like that. Let's just make sure the rest of your stay is pleasant," I said, opening the door to one of our top rooms. He looked inside, and his face brightened. "This will do nicely." "Thanks." Seeing him calm down was a relief. As I filled out some paperwork, we started chatting. It turned out he was a cryptocurrency investor, traveling to enjoy the rewards of his smart decisions. "It's not as great as it sounds," he admitted. "I can imagine," I said, handing him his new room keys. "But, hey, you get to meet new people all the time, right?" He chuckled. "Yeah. Like hotel managers who know how to handle a grumpy guest." I laughed. "Part of the job's charm." Before heading to his room, he paused. "Hey, Rachel. Would you like to grab dinner later? I owe you for dealing with my tantrum." I was a little surprised. I didn't see that coming, but he seemed sincere. "Sure, Sean. That would be nice." And just like that, I ended up having dinner with a guest from the hotel. We talked about everything from cryptocurrency to our favorite pizza toppings. He was easy to talk to, laughed a lot, and didn't mind when I vented a bit about my busy day. After that unexpected dinner, Sean and I started spending more time together. It wasn't like one of those cheesy love stories. It felt more real, more raw. After my shifts at the hotel, we'd meet up, sometimes grabbing a late-night bite or just walking and talking until the early hours. One evening, we found ourselves at a small dive bar, the kind where everyone knows each other, and the beer is always cold. We were tucked in a corner booth, the noise of the bar just a quiet background to our conversation. Sean was peeling the label off his beer bottle, something he always did when he had something on his mind. "You know, Rachel, I've traveled a lot, seen a lot of places, but life on the road can get pretty lonely." "Yeah." I took a sip of my drink, watching him closely. "So why keep doing it? Why not settle down or something?" He let out a short, dry laugh. "Settle down and do what? Invest in real estate? Get a dog? And mow the lawn on Sundays? That's not me." I chuckled, shaking my head. "It doesn't have to be that boring, you know? But I get it. Freedom's hard to let go of." We sat in comfortable silence for a bit, just listening to the buzz of the bar. Then, without really meaning to, I started talking about my own life, sharing more than I had with anyone in a long time. "You know, after my parents died, it was just me and my little sister Janet. I had to grow up fast and take care of both of us. I put everything on hold, her schooling, her life, it all depended on me." Sean turned to me, his face serious. "That's heavy, Rachel. Must have been tough, taking on all that responsibility." "Yeah, it was rough, but what can you do? You play the hand you're dealt." I shrugged, trying to keep the mood from getting too heavy. "You've done well for yourself though," he said, trying to lift the mood, "managing a hotel and all." I laughed, a real laugh this time. "Yeah, I guess. Managing the hotel, paying the bills, making sure Janet had a more or less normal life." He leaned in, his eyes serious. "You're remarkable. You know that?" "Stop it," I said, playfully swatting his arm, but inside, his words made me feel warm, like he really saw me. "So, what about you?" I asked, changing the subject. "You ever think about having a family?" I asked, turning the conversation to him. Sean shifted in his seat, looking a bit uncomfortable. "Family, that's a tricky one. Let's just say my parents and I don't really see things the same way. They have their empire, and I have my life on the road." "An empire?" I teased, bumping his shoulder. "Sounds fancy." He gave a small smile. "Not as fancy as it sounds, more like a lot of expectations and being tied down." We spent hours talking that night. It felt like opening up broke down some walls between us. I didn't even realize how late it was until the bartender started putting chairs on the tables. Things with Sean had been going well, but he always kept a bit of distance when it came to serious conversations, like where we were headed, until one evening when everything changed. I had invited Sean over for dinner at my place. It was the first time he'd seen where I lived, other than just picking me up for dates. He walked around my apartment, looking at everything. "This is nice. Really nice, Rachel. I didn't expect you to live in a place like this," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. I laughed, spreading my arms. "What? Did you think I lived in a shack or something? After my parents passed, they left us in a good spot. We sold their house, and I bought this apartment for Janet and me. I made the first payment on the mortgage, and now it's mine." Sean nodded, clearly impressed. "You've done really well for yourself. I mean, really well." The evening went on, and after dinner, we sat on the couch with a bottle of wine between us. That's when he dropped the bombshell. "Rachel, I've been doing a lot of thinking about us." My heart started to race as I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, yeah? And what have you been thinking?" He took my hand, his eyes locking onto mine. "I love you, Rachel. I know I said I wasn't looking to settle down, but with you, it's different. I can't imagine being anywhere else but here with you." His words hit me like a wave. Just a few weeks ago, he was all about not committing, and now this. But when I looked into his eyes, I could see he was serious. "Are you sure, Sean? This isn't just something you're saying, because of the moment." He shook his head, squeezing my hand. "I've never been more serious about anything. Rachel, will you marry me?" The question hung in the air, heavy with meaning. My mind raced, but my heart had already decided before I could think twice. "Yes, yes, I'll marry you." And just like that, we were engaged. A couple of weeks later, Sean gave me a beautiful ring. Simple but elegant. It felt like a dream, like I was stepping into something surreal. I didn't want to wake up from the dream I was living in. Sean started talking about the wedding almost right away. "You deserve something amazing, Rachel. Let's have a wedding no one will ever forget," he said one evening while we looked over budgets and venues. I felt unsure when he suggested the financial plan. I was thinking, since I have the contacts, I'll organize everything. You just provide the funds, say $30,000, and I'll cover the honeymoon at the most luxurious hotel in the world. After that, we'll get a house together." The amount made me pause. It was a lot, almost everything I had, but seeing the excitement on his face made me push aside my doubts. "Okay, if you think that's best, I trust you, Sean." I transferred the money into his account, and he took over the planning. Watching him get so involved in the arrangements made my heart swell. Here was a man who had come into my life out of the blue, but now felt like he'd always belonged. Every night, I went to bed with a smile, thinking about how lucky I was and how perfectly everything was turning out. As the wedding plans were coming together, I thought it was time for Sean to meet my sister, Janet. She was the only family I had left, and her opinion mattered, even if she could be a bit much at times. We decided to meet at the local diner where Janet worked as a waitress. The bell jingled as we walked in, and Janet spotted us right away, her face lighting up. "Hey, sis," she called out, waving us over. Her eyes then moved to Sean. "And you must be the famous fiancé I've heard all about." Sean gave his charming smile and stepped forward to shake her hand. "And you must be the beautiful sister I've heard so much about. You two could be twins." I roll my eyes, feeling both proud and a little annoyed. Okay, cut the charm, mister." Janet laughed, then leaned in with a playful look. "So, Sean, are you as rich as they say?" "My sister sure knows how to pick me, Janet," I hissed, embarrassed. She always knew how to push my buttons. Sean just laughed and took it all in stride. "Well, I've done all right, but Rachel's right. It's not about the money. It's the love that matters." Janet raised an eyebrow, looking impressed. "Smooth talker, I like him." Over the next few weeks, Sean continued to be the perfect gentleman. He was charming, attentive, and always made me feel like I was the most important person in his life. He didn't even flinch at Janet's flirtatious comments, which was a relief. One day, in the middle of all the wedding madness, my best friend Olivia and I went to a bridal shop to find my wedding dress. The place was filled with silk and satin, a bridal dream come true. As I was being zipped into one of the gowns, the reality of it all started to sink in. I heard a familiar laugh from the next booth. Curious, I peeked around the curtain, and there was Janet, twirling in front of a mirror in a wedding dress. "Janet, what are you doing in a wedding dress?" I asked, my voice full of surprise. She stopped twirling and gave me a crooked smile. "Oh, just trying some stuff on, for fun." Olivia, who had come over to see what was happening, chuckled. "Looks like someone's caught the wedding bug." Janet's laugh was awkward, not quite reaching her eyes. "Yeah, something like that. Let's just say I might need one sooner than you think." "Wait, are you serious? Is there something you need to tell me? I asked, half amused and half concerned. Just let it be a surprise, Janet said, her tone light, but a bit distant. We all laughed it off, thinking she was just being her usual dramatic self. I turned back to my own reflection, but the image of Janet in that wedding dress stayed in my mind. Still, I brushed it aside and focused on my own big day. That day started out like any other until it didn't. Sean left in a rush after breakfast, mumbling something about an important meeting he couldn't miss. He forgot his phone on the coffee table, and just minutes after he left, it started buzzing non-stop. Curiosity got the better of me. I figured it might be something urgent about the wedding or his work. Probably just a buddy checking in, I muttered to myself as I picked up the phone. There was no password. Sean never bothered with one. That should have been my first clue, that he wasn't as careful as he thought. The screen lit up with a flood of messages, all from the same contact. Janet Banana. My heart sank a little. Why is he texting Janet so much? I told myself I was being paranoid, but I opened the messages anyway. What I read felt like a punch to the gut. I can't wait to be with you forever, Janet had written. Forget Rachel. It's you I want standing with me. And Sean, the man I was about to marry, replied, soon, love. We just need to play along a little longer. She's so clueless. It's almost funny. I kept scrolling, each message cutting deeper. They were talking about the wedding, about me, about how they planned to use my money to start their life together once I was out of the way. But the worst part, Janet was pregnant with Sean's baby. The room spun. I felt sick. My sister, my baby sister, who I had practically raised, was stabbing me in the back. And Sean, the man who had promised to love and protect me, was the one handing her the knife. An hour later, Sean came back, looking flustered. Hey, babe. You see my phone? He asked, kissing my cheek like nothing was wrong. I handed him the phone. A fake smile plastered on my face, the same smile I'd used 1,000 times before. You left it here, I said sweetly. You must be slipping, leaving your lifeline behind. As he scrolled through his phone, probably checking for any missed messages, I watched him closely. Does he have any idea that I know? Does he even care? But Sean was clueless, lost in his own lies. He laughed at something on the screen, and I felt my fists clench. Laugh it up, Sean. Enjoy it while you can. Later that night, as we lay in bed, he was all smiles, talking about our future. It's going to be perfect, Rachel. This wedding, our life together, you'll see. I turned to face him, my heart torn between love and betrayal. I'm sure it will be, I murmured, letting him pull me close. Absolutely perfect. While he drifted off to sleep, I stayed awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. I wasn't going to be the victim in this twisted game. If they wanted a show, I'd give them one they'd never forget. But first, I had to keep playing the role of the loving fiancé just a little longer. The day of the wedding arrived, and with it, the performance of a lifetime. The grand hall was filled with flowers, and our guests whispered excitedly, completely unaware of the drama about to unfold. Just as we were about to exchange vows, the doors at the back of the hall flew open. Janet, wearing a wedding dress, marched down the aisle like she owned the place. The crowd gasped, turning to watch her. She didn't stop until she reached us, pushing me aside with dramatic flair. I'm the one who deserves to be here, not you, Rachel. She declared loudly. I'm having his baby. She turned to Sean. Tell her. Tell everyone. Sean let go of my hand and laughed, a harsh, ugly sound that echoed through the hall. Thanks, Rachel, for setting up this amazing wedding. It's perfect for me and your sister. The guests gasped, shock written on every face. Sean continued. Why don't you take a seat, Rachel? Enjoy the show as a guest. His words were meant to hurt me, but I just smiled and stepped back gracefully. Of course, I said, my voice calm and steady. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Their smug smiles faltered, confusion flickering in their eyes as I walked away, leaving them without the scene they were expecting. I sat down, crossing my legs, and focused on the mess unfolding in front of me. As Sean and Janet turned to face the priest and made their vows, another interruption stopped everything. A woman, clearly older and filled with fury, stormed down the aisle. Sean, she shouted, making him go pale. You lying, cheating scumbag. The entire room went silent. Sean's fake smile vanished, and panic flickered across his face as the woman stood before everyone. I'm his wife and the mother of his child, she declared, her voice shaking with anger, which he conveniently forgot, along with the vows he made to me. Janet's face turned white, her legs nearly giving out beneath her. She looked from Sean to the woman, then to me, silently pleading for help. I stood up, my voice calm and clear. I have a little surprise for everyone too. Each word was spoken with cold precision. Sean isn't just a cheater, he's broke. A private investigator confirmed he's drowning in debt. His investments failed, and worst of all, He's been stealing from his own family. The room erupted into whispers, the sound of gossip and scandal filling the air. Sean's wife turned her fury toward Janet. "And you," she shouted, advancing on my sister. "How dare you?" Janet stumbled backward, tears streaming down her face. I watched with a mix of satisfaction and sadness. After weeks of pain and planning, seeing them fall apart felt like justice, but it also left me with a hollow ache inside. Sean's wife continued, her voice sharp and unforgiving. "He's left us with nothing, and you think he's going to build a life with you? Wake up, girl." Janet sobbed, her dream wedding turning into a nightmare before her eyes. Sean tried to speak, desperate to save face, but his wife slapped him hard across the face. The sharp crack echoed through the hall, leaving the guests in stunned silence. Just as everyone was starting to absorb what had happened, another set of uninvited guests burst through the door of Sean's parents. The elderly couple, looking every bit the part of upset aristocrats, scanned the room in disbelief. The father, a stern man in a sharp suit, was the first to speak, his voice booming over the shocked murmurs of the crowd. "I am utterly ashamed of you, Sean," his father shouted, his gaze piercing into his son as if he could make him feel regret with just his words. His mother, a frail woman with tears streaming down her face, clutched a handkerchief tightly. "My son. How could you?" she sobbed. "This is not how we raised you. Deceiving these women is unforgivable." Sean stood there, his usual smooth charm gone, crumbling under the weight of his family's public disapproval. He tried to speak, to explain, but his father cut him off. "You are no longer part of this family's legacy. Consider yourself without an inheritance," his father declared, his voice cold and final. The room erupted into chaos once again. Guests pulled out their phones, likely capturing the dramatic downfall of what was supposed to be my dream wedding. In the weeks that followed, I took Sean to court. I sued him to get back the $30,000 I had foolishly handed over for the wedding. The evidence was clear, and the judge ruled in my favor, ordering Sean to repay every penny. Not long after, Sean's wife also took legal action. She sued him for emotional distress, deception, and alimony for their daughter. I attended every court session, feeling a bittersweet sense of justice as I watched Sean face the consequences of his actions. To my surprise, Janet was by his side, supporting the man who had nearly ruined me. One day, outside the courtroom, Janet confronted me. "He loves me, Rachel, and I love him. We're going to get through this, no matter what you or anyone else thinks," she said, her voice shaky but determined. I stared at her, the sister I once loved, now almost a stranger. "Love? You call this love? He used both of us, Janet. Open your eyes. He's a liar, but he's changed. He'll change for me," she insisted, her voice trembling. "You just couldn't see the good in him." I shook my head, a cold laugh escaping me. "Good? There's no good in him, Janet. He's a con artist, and you're just another one of his victims." As I walked away, the weight of everything that had happened pressed down on me. The lies, the betrayal, the court battles, it had all taken a toll. Yet, there was a strange sense of closure. The man who had promised to love me had shown his true self, and I had exposed him for the world to see. The final chapter of my story with Sean didn't end with a bang, but with a quiet silence as he slipped out of town, leaving behind a trail of broken promises and unpaid debts. He had managed to settle his debts with me and his legal wife, maybe thinking that would wipe his slate clean before he disappeared. But the real mess he left behind was with Janet, my sister, who is now alone and pregnant. A few weeks after Sean vanished, Janet showed up at my apartment. It was the first time we'd seen each other since the drama at the courthouse. She stood there, a shadow of the confident person she once was, her eyes downcast. "Rachel, I need help," she said, her voice shaking. "He left me, and I'm going to have his baby. I have nothing." The old me, the one who had raised her, might have opened the door and let her back into my life without hesitation. But too much had happened. "You have the apartment and you'll have the baby. That's a start. You're not on the streets, Janet. You're not helpless. But I don't have any money, Rachel. The bills, the baby, I need help." I shook my head, the decision firm in my heart, even though it hurt to see her like this. "You made your choice, Janet. Now you can make another. Figure it out, like I had to when Mom and Dad died, and like I did when you betrayed me." She broke down, covering her face with her hands, her body trembling. "I never meant to hurt you. I thought I was in love. I really did. Love doesn't make you betray your family. Love doesn't make you stand by while I was humiliated. You didn't love me enough to stay away from him or to tell me the truth before everything fell apart." Janet looked up, desperation in her eyes. "So that's it? You're just going to turn me away?" "Yes, that's it," I said, my voice steady. "You're going to walk away from here and take care of your child, just like I took care of you." I turned back to my apartment and closed the door, shutting out her cries with a final, echoing slam. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was necessary. After that day, life slowly returned to a peaceful normal I hadn't realized I missed. I threw myself back into my work, picked up old hobbies I had neglected, and slowly rebuilt the independence that had always been part of who I was. As for Janet, I heard through family friends that she had her baby, a little girl. They said she was getting by, managing. I sincerely hope she found her way, found strength in being a mother, strength she hadn't found as a sister.